Hello, I am Sean Beck. I am Hugo Ortega's Sommelier and Beverage Director for H-Town Restaurant Group, which includes his and Tracy Vaught's restaurants, Backstreet Cafe, Hugo's regional Mexican cuisine, Caracol's coastal Mexican cuisine, and Sochi, our modern Oaxacan restaurant in downtown Houston. I have been his beverage director and sommelier for almost the last 20 years, and I have helped design and open all our programs from scratch, including Hugo's, Caracol, and Sochi. And I've been working with agave spirits and cocktails for pretty much that entire time of my career with them. So when I began working at Backstreet, which is an old little two-story house we had, and even though I was a sommelier, we have a big brunch over there. And so while at brunch, I would get involved in using seasonal ingredients and playing around and creating new cocktails. And so one of the realms was tequila, obviously. And then while at Backstreet, we decided we were going to open and create Hugo's, which is this kind of regional Mexican cuisine that didn't exist in Houston at that time. There were a few taquerias, but most of the culture in Houston was Tex-Mex and frozen margaritas and flour tortillas and fajitas. And so we wanted to show the scope of what Mexico could do. And so we were adamant we would not use any sweet and sour mix. We would only use fresh product. We would have a pretty in-depth traditional program that showcased the realm of tequila and other agave spirit. Once we decided we were going to open up Sochi, this modern Oaxacan restaurant, I went kind of all in on mezcal. We had a substantial list over there, and it was my first chance to kind of write in detail about what makes mezcal mezcal in a way that was relatable to consumers and digestible for them to understand. You know, I always think about mezcal in the way I think about like Burgundy and wine, and how once you taste it, you want to explore the region and discover all the differences. But another way I like telling people about it, it's a lot like the realm of barbecue, right? Once you have barbecue, you start to realize there's all these regional differences in the meats they use, the sauces they use, the smoker's style, the woods they use. And so once you get the barbecue bug, you begin exploring it and start kind of discovering how much flavor there is. And you're like, why would I ever eat oven roasted skinless chicken breast again when I could have barbecue out there? So, and that's kind of mezcal to me. So the interesting thing to understand about mezcal is that it's so unique. It's arguably the most unique spirit in the world because it's probably the only one that kind of so perfectly marries these ideas of terroir, which is like something that exudes a sense of place, and it's a term we use a lot with wine, and artisanship and craftsmanship, because so much of the process is between where and what you're using to make your mezcal and who and how they cook it. And I often correlate it more to wine so that people understand that. You know, in the wine world, Burgundy is probably the most famous or most iconic wine region in France. It's the birthplace of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and that's really all they do. But there's so many minute differences that over like 1,000 years, they've broken down the region to location to location to location. So vineyards have names, areas have names, they've been discussed and regulated. And so that's kind of what we're seeing in mezcal. We're starting to recognize all the different states that do mezcal, but we're also recognizing the places within a state has a specific style, like Sola de Vega and the higher kind of tropical realm that it's in. And so you see a lot of those flavors of the region in mezcal up to a point, and that terroir comes through. Because if I'm a mezcalero, terroir is always going to be embedded in my product, because the whole idea of mezcal was not like I'm an artist and I'm going to do my thing only this way. It was really like I'm a poor person in a very poor state in Mexico. I'm going to use the things around me to make my product. And after hundreds of years, it's now become embedded in the way they make their product. You cook it in a pit underground because you're in a poor state that didn't have clay ovens that you could build. You made underground stone pits. You smoked it over wood and charcoal because that's what you had for fuel in your area, and so you used the wood around your house. You fermented it in old barrels or in cow hides or whatever you can get your hands on, because that's all you could get. And so much of the process of making mezcal was born out of necessity, and you know, we covet what's in our area, and so we use what's around us, and so it becomes embedded into the flavor profile of mezcal. And then on top of that, you have the little touches that a mescalero might add, like how long they ferment, their roasting techniques, how they build their pit, what species they like to use, how long they age them, do they use any wood in their program, what level do they bottle at, what proofs do they like to keep it at, what water are they using, are they soaking the tails and head in the water? And so, it's so cool because you can learn so many of these things about it, and at every step it's kind of layered with the reason for it. And that reason might be they think it makes it better, or that reason might be this is how it formed because this is what was around us for hundreds of years. I think if you're a sales rep and you're showing a product, regardless of the product, but especially when it comes to agave spirits and someone like me, you should know about the product. And because it makes you more confident as a salesperson. Not because I want you to walk in the door and start quoting me facts and figures and the bibliography of every ingredient. It's because I want you comfortable enough that we can have a conversation about the product, and then if I do need more detailed information, you're capable of answering it. That's how I approach every guest. I don't think most guests want to know where exactly the agave came from. I don't think they even want to know necessarily what species it was, or what tank it was fermented in, or how the agave was cooked, or how it was crushed. But I want to know all these things so I can have a conversation. And I think if you are selling mezcal, then chances are you're selling it to an establishment that is built around Mexican products, which means they care a lot, or you have a bartender who's become deeply passionate about a category. And it's a category that you have to be passionate about to sell. And so you're going to be engaging with someone who really already knows a lot about the product and wants you to know a lot about the product, and probably cares pretty deeply about the integrity of the product. And I hate using that phrase product, because mezcal is so much more than that, but I would say it's true of anything, whether you're selling a gin, a bourbon, a tequila, whatever. But it's especially true of agave spirits, because you have to remember, they were born somewhere, No one's ever probably going to ask you where the grain came from that was used to make the base liquor for a vodka or a gin. But we're almost certainly going to ask you where your agave comes from, and maybe how old it is, and how they're roasting it, because that's the story. That's the life of that product. I mean, it began in the ground in a place, and you can't really say that about anyone else in the spirit world. So if you master talking about things like mezcal and tequila, everything else will be easy for you. So when you're writing a program, you have several obligations. I would like to say my only obligation is buying the absolute best quality product I can, but at the end of the day is I have to run a successful restaurant, I have to maintain costs, I have to be able to get consistent product in so that I can always have the cocktails taste the way they're supposed to be. So I kind of marry all these things, but for us in particular, when I'm picking out mezcals and tequilas that go in the program, it has to taste good first and foremost, which is why I taste anything and everything. I even taste the stuff that I know I'm probably not going to pick up just because I want to know what they're doing. For a program like ours, which is built on this idea of integrity, all the ingredients we bring in Mexico. I mean, we have our own farm that's raising corn in Oaxaca from us. We bring in peppers and baby avocados and wheat lacoche and insects, and we work with regional farmers. Our wine lists are really different. I can't be selling and buying mass-produced people that are maybe degrading the Oaxacan environment or cheating the process or are bastardizing mezcal. So if a product comes in that I know is calling itself mezcal but isn't using a pit to cook and is using gas processes, it's probably not going to end well if you're going to get in my face about, I need you to pick up this product. I mean, your job is to show me product. Your job is to introduce it to me. My job is to buy the things that fit within the scope of my program. And that's going to be different from every place you go to. I mean, a lot of bars you walk into, they may not care at all about the legacy of the product. Their only care is, how much is it costing me per serving? Where can I buy it at? Maybe do you have a bar spend to support it when I launch it? So, you have to kind of tailor your approach to every different account. But, we're going into a place like me, I'm probably to the deep end. And if you survive swimming in the water with me, not that I'm going to be mean or cruel to you, but if you can come through unscathed through our conversation and get out of there feeling confident, then everything else will probably be a walk in the park. Because I'm probably about as intense about what happens with agave spirits as anyone will be. So I hope at the end of this, what we come to is this idea that we, meaning you, the supplier or sales rep, and people like me, the buyer, have this symbiotic relationship that we're in, and that it's a mutually beneficial relationship, and that we all need to go into it knowing a little bit more before we sit down and have our conversation about what it is we're going to talk about, and that over the course of our tasting and talking, we learn even more during that process. Because, you know, as jaded as I get sometimes that I get to see all these things out there now, that wasn't the case 18 years ago. So it is really exciting that I can taste all these amazing mezcals, that we went from just a world of mixtos and Del Maguey to people like Vago and Bozal and Real Minero and Rey Campara and so many other incredible products. I love that, and I love the fact that I get to share them with people. But that magic happens because of what happens at the table with us. And if we both come in with a little bit more of a professional mindset and a little bit more preparedness, then we're going to have a great time together. We're going to have a great conversation, and we're both going to walk out of there having learned a little bit more, which is going to allow us to have better conversations with the guest and the people in the city and our coworkers, which makes the idea of these spirits, these agave spirits, and especially mezcal, so much more accessible to everyone. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'd love. I would love for mezcal and tequila, maybe not to be as common because it's a more artisan product, but to be as accessible to the consumer as vodka and gin and whiskey have become.